tuned for another episode of the Coming Soon podcast with Spider.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Coming Soon podcast. Of course, San Antonio, Texas, with my guest, Sean Richards. Sir, how are you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good, man. The weekend's here and right on.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Today was my Friday at work. Looking forward to it. I've been busy myself, just attending events here in San Antonio, man. There's a lot going on. But yeah, man. I mean, of course, I appreciate your time. Appreciate you jumping on here. And we kind of got a little sidetracked a little while ago, talking about, certain things. But yeah, man. But of course, I mean, I wanted to bring you on here and, of course, ask a few questions as far as the projects that you've been involved in and actually working on right now, because you did send me a few links. I mean, and I guess let me ask you, what would you prefer? I mean, is it a voice actor or is it a voiceover?
Yeah, well, I'm got a demo reel for acting. I've been in various projects as like a supporting and a lead actor. I've also worked, just getting consistent gigs that last 6-7 months out in LA when I lived out there as an extra for TV shows. And it turned out, you're supposed to be like literally, you don't expect to be in focus, but I got literally featured a few times, and that's just luck of the draw. You don't know that's going to happen. That happened on the Goldbergs and Westworld, and I got to meet Ed Harris, and he's always been one of my favorite actors. So it was really cool to get to meet him and talk to him a little bit. But also too, I have a voiceover reel, so I've got a few imitations I can do. And also just my speaking voice too. I growing up had been told, you should try for radio with that voice, or you should, maybe do something with that. So I'm available too as a voiceover artist. So.
Oh, sweet, man. And of course, I mean, and yeah, I did notice that, dude, because of course your monotone, as far as how you carry your voice right now, I'm actually allergies attacked me last week, man. I've been getting over them all week. So I kind of lost my voice throughout the week, but it's nothing great, but of course we all have one. But yourself, man, I mean, of course, did you pursue radio with that voice? Let me ask you that.
Well, actually, and about the allergies too. Yeah, I'm adjusting to my new surroundings here. It's every morning with the allergies here, and that's something else. So yeah, we're on the same page with that for sure. Yeah, I did look into radio. And from what I discovered, it's a really tough market to break into. I mean, I think you just got to know people and be connected. I did hit up a radio station. Actually, I moved from my hometown in northeastern Indiana in in March, and I was there for 4 years. And I was told that again. So I did a voiceover reel of things I've done, things I can do. I gave it to a local radio station, and it's tough. It's a tough market. It's a tough gig to get. So, and that was somebody was just being straight with me about that. So I tried, man. I mean, I'm anybody out there need a voiceover guy to do whatever, narration or a part for, I don't know, animation. I mean, I'm I'm all in.
Yeah, for sure, man. Because for having a voice like that, I mean, of course, there's a lot of opportunities, and it is true because even like with the indie films, I've noticed even from the get go, it's usually the same circle. At first, I was like, man, I mean, I was kind of annoyed by that because I was like, man, they're not trying to give anybody else a chance, but then come to realize that it's like they keep using the same actors because they're reliable, they can count on them, they're always available, and so it makes sense. So I'm like, okay, you know what? And for the most part, I mean, here locally, I have been invited to participate in a few movies, local indie films, and so it's always great. For me, I'd rather be in the picture. I'd be involved some way. I've done some video perks myself through the past months, but it's always outside the city. I haven't done anything locally, but I mean, of course, I mean, let me ask you this, because even with the podcast, I mean, I started this a year and a half ago. Before this, I mean, I still dab in combat sports and do commentary and participate in that. But yeah, I never really pursued it. I never really like, hey, I want to do this. It's just But I mean, for somebody like yourself that actually wants to do something with it, man. I mean, I would say reach out and start doing your own podcast as well, man. Because for one thing, it's the biggest free platform. Personally, I mean, I'm like, what, I can promote pretty much anything, anybody, myself, as far as my sponsors and everybody else I got going on. But with somebody like yourself, that has a gift like that, but definitely, bro.
Yeah,
Maybe,
well, thank you. Appreciate that.
maybe
Yeah.
you can be my co-host, brother. How about that, man? I'll bring you on here a couple of days a month or something, bro.
Right. Sounds good. Yeah, I was cracking up a coworker just yesterday with my Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it was it's fun. It's fun to just joke. And I grew up in the '80s watching all these now classics and
Yeah.
just goofing with friends and just trying them out. And it's just it's a good time. Can't be a good laugh. So why not?
No, for sure. And let me ask you this because the past projects, I mean, you said that you were able to get a couple of I guess what was it, like an opportunity, like when it came to film? Because I mean, you were there, and was it something that they liked about you, or was it like, hey, you know what, like the guy's still here, let's use him, kind of thing?
As far as like what I've been in,
Right.
or
Well, in the
oh,
films you've been in.
well, I mean, I guess the short kind of a short way to explain it would be, so I moved to Indianapolis in 2012, and that's about an hour and a half down the road or 2 hours down the road from where I'm from. Much bigger city. It's got a talent agency. I was able to get in with them and just start going for it. Late starter, but better late than never, right? So I just gave it a shot. I got a commercial with Carrier HVAC, which I think they're nationwide or maybe international. And so I did a commercial with that. And then I ended up uh, actually, the first project idea I had was for this documentary I did. And it was about a man named Richard Brooker. He was somebody I'd met on a few occasions, and he shared some stories. He was a really engaging guy. He was a party guy, good times guy. He was the first guy to play Jason to wear the hockey mask in Friday the 13th Part 3 in '82, and he was just a very a diplomatic, um, good speaker. And then so I met him, and I had been to the property where they had shot Part 3 in '82 on my first trip to California in 2003. And I had I went through the Values Day brothers, got permission to visit the barn and the cabin in the barn on the property, did video, did photography. And actually that photo was my first published photo. And it's funny because I took that on one of those, I don't know if you remember these, but in the early 2000s, those recyclable Kodak cameras, you'd like take pictures on. They're plastic.
Yeah.
You put it in the little envelope, and then you just get a roll of film back. Like literally, that picture that got published that turned out amazing was from one of those cameras. So,
That's pretty cool, man.
yeah. So basically, long story short, I I had this photo and photography and video of that set, and not even a year or two after I visited that set, some trespassers had snuck in and burned that cabin to the ground. And years had gone by. That was 2006, and years had gone by, and I'm still to this day, I'm the only one that I know of that has video and photography of it before it burned.
Wow.
So aside from films that shot there and maybe some behind the scenes shots. And then Richard suddenly passed in 2013. He was 58, and he had a heart attack. So my initial idea, and I was living in Indianapolis at the time, I heard that he had passed, was to do like a 2-minute video for the fans to share the photography and the video footage of the set and the cabin, the barn, the way it was, and dedicate it to Richard. It probably would have had some music over it, and at the end, for Richard Brooker. But life ended up taking me west. I ended up in Arizona for about 9 months. Then I got the day job in Pasadena, California. And then I discovered that like 4 of his co-stars from that film still lived in the area. There was a number of his other friends that had lived in the area too that were still working in film. And so then I just, well, it's like, I'm here now.
Yeah.
And now I want to make this the best it can be. And so I just started knocking on doors and reaching out to people, and, you know, got 4 of his co-stars and a number of other people, and stumbled across some previously unpublished photography that's amazing behind the scenes shots just by accident that's included in this that I don't think it had been public before this documentary came out. Just some really great stuff. And so that was like my first endeavor into, you know, doing a film. And I wore a lot of hats in that. You know, I was exec producer, I was funding it. It was my idea. And so I'm meeting people and telling them what it's about and if they're interested, and then they come on board, and then, you know, knocking on doors. And it's really tough, man. It's really tough making a first film, because they don't, first of all, they don't know if you're even going to finish it. They don't know who you are. Second of all, they don't know what kind of work you're going to do. Is it going to be, you know, a piece of crap, or is it going to be pretty good? You know, so I think people are leery for those reasons, and it's understandable too why, you know. So but yeah, so that was a full-time thing outside of my day job, which was 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Well, it was 8 to 5. It was, and then I would work on that on the side. And then after that went into post-production, I started pursuing acting more fully because it freed up my schedule. And then I, you know, worked on a number of things as a supporting actor, and a few things as a lead. And then, like I say, that last 6 or 7 months living in LA, working self-booking for TV shows as an extra, just a way to get consistent income. You know, it's not cheap living there. You got to get the rent and maybe have a little spending money. But yeah, I was like, well, I'm going to do it up as much as I can while I'm here. And that was an awesome journey too. I mean, met a number of people working on TV shows. And like I say, lucky to get some really, and I've not seen probably 90% of those that I've been in, because I think they require subscriptions, and I don't have that kind of ego. I'm like, if I'm in, great. You know, if not, whatever. I mean, it's like, I don't want to pay for this. Hey, 2-second shot. Okay, you know, it's like, no, that's fine.
Yeah, like I'll wait to find it on YouTube somewhere, right?
Yeah, but it was fun. It was an experience. And then I moved to the Vegas area and did some commercials there. Was on a commercial as a pastry chef, which the only pastry I know how to make is toaster strudel, but that was funny to play that part. And that was for the Wynn, the casino, the Wynn, really nice casino hotel there in Vegas. And just done a little bit of here, a little bit there. Done some promos for some friends. Did an ad with my Jeep. I got a 71 Jeep. It's kind of like the Friday. Actually, it's the same year as the Friday the 13th Part 1 Jeep. I found out after I got it. And that's been used in some things. And I made some friends and along the way. And I've been, you know, I've helped out behind the scenes in their productions. And it's just, you know, I've done a little bit of everything, you know, behind the camera, in front of the camera.
No, for sure. And let me ask you, I mean, which do you prefer? I mean, do you prefer to be in front of the camera or behind?
Well, I mean, right now I'm kind of more focused on maybe in front of the camera. You know, I kind of like go back and forth. You know, a little bit of variety. You know, I'm actually looking more for in front of the camera right now because I've been working on something, you know, pretty much behind the scenes on my second documentary, and finishing that up, and it should be out this year. That's been a really tough process too. It's about my dad's story, and he was a Vietnam veteran, and he's literally a miracle case in the VA healthcare system. They couldn't understand why somebody with his injury was not either dead or a vegetable, because he had about the size of an orange missing from his brain after what happened to him.
Yeah, that's right.
But he had to relearn to walk and talk, and spent 2 years in Walter Reed VA healthcare system in Washington, D.C. And then a few months after he got out, and like, I think it was mid to later 1970s, maybe September-ish. He met my mom, and then and then what he did after that, like it's an unbelievable story. He ran like 5 miles a week when I was a kid. He taught himself how to play pool. He had a right-sided paralysis and walked with a strut, and it was like kind of looked like a cool guy strut, but it's just fitting because he was a cool guy. So, but I mean, he taught himself. He had to relearn everything. He had to learn how to write left-handed and teach himself how to drive with a slowed right foot. And like I say, he ran 5 miles a week when I was a kid. He had this super fit little figure. I remember growing up, and skinny little guy, and he played racquetball, and he beat everybody at racquetball. He taught himself golf. He beat people at golf. I'm a pretty good euchre player, and he beat me like he wasn't even trying. He had like this gift, this otherworldly thing about him that just it's and the stories that come in with his friends and family sharing, like when it comes out, it's going to be out hopefully soon. It's going to, at the very least, I think, raise an eyebrow for people. It's like, wow. And I think it's a story that the world really needs to hear right now for inspiration, because I think we're in some dire straits right now. So I think it's a perfect timing for it.
No, I agree, man, because I mean, we had talked earlier before we even started recording, the whole political thing is a circus, and distraction after distraction, and it's like, what's really going on? But yeah, you know what? I did watch the trailer. I know you had sent me 2 links, and I appreciate that, man. I mean, I definitely went through them. Yeah, the story about your dad. I mean, I could tell it was personal. I could tell it was from the heart, and then, I can't wait for you to actually, once the finished product is done, put it out there to the world to see, man, because they definitely got to see that, man. Share that story.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Now, let me ask you, as far as the voice acting, man, because of course, when it comes to projects, I mean, do you throw stuff out there? I mean, because I know the YouTube channel, that one's yours, right? The Smoking Zombie Films?
The Smoking Zombie Films. Yeah, that's mine. There's projects with mine on there, and I just really started building that this past 6 months. I think it had a few things on there, and I didn't really do much with it until maybe 6 months ago or so, and I started adding a lot more of the stuff that that I've been associated with to it. But there's also things on there that I don't claim everything on there. There's also videos on there. I'm a big historical buff, and there's things on there that interest me, and I even put like a soundtracks playlist on there too. And none of that's mine. I didn't know you could, when building this channel, I didn't know you could add things from other people's stuff to your channel to make it kind of your own thing. I thought that was kind of like, you can't do that. That's their channel stuff. And it's like, no, it's fine. You just add it to your playlist, and it still shows as theirs. So I've just kind of put a lot of things that are things that I really like, or that are rare or interesting, or documentary. I mean, I put George Romero, who I met in 2006, the godfather of the zombies and Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, all that. He has a really interesting Dawn of the Dead documentary that I saw online, and I just added it to my documentary section because I'm like, this is great. And so I just, it's yeah. And the soundtracks, none of that's mine. I just created that playlist because growing up in the 80s, a lot of those songs were not available.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those songs that were featured in Friday the 13th films, like those didn't exist other than in the movie, and you only heard maybe a part of it. And now somehow, some way, somebody has found these, and I'm like, man, I got to put these somewhere, like, so people can check these out, like they actually exist. And so yeah, I do, a lot of that on location stuff is mine. I was doing that even 20 some years ago. I think I did my first major trip in 2003. It's wild. That was over 20 years ago. And I went to a lot of places on that trip. That was my first East Coast trip. One of the places I visited was on Martha's Vineyard, where they shot Jaws, and saw all the relevant locales that were featured in the movie. And even on that last day that I wasn't even expecting to be out there, got a boat ride across the way to where the Orca 2 was just sitting there riding on the beach. And I couldn't believe it was just sitting there riding on the beach. Like, and that's one of the videos on the channel. It it's not super, iPhone quality. This is what we had back then. It was like a high camera. So I just pulled it from that. But yeah, so the Orca 1 was and the Orca 2 look identical for the movie Jaws. The Orca 1 was the boat that ran. The Orca 2 was simply made for the part, and it didn't run. It was just made for the part where the shark comes up and breaks the boat. And they took the Orca 1 back to Universal Studios Hollywood, and then they left the Orca 2 just literally on the beach there, and the Atlantic's coming up and hitting it, and the years go by and it's falling apart, and people are stealing, I guess, big chunks of it. And
oh yeah, bro, yeah.
It's like, why didn't you guys put this in a Smithsonian, or why didn't you put it in a museum, or why didn't you at least put it in like a Planet Hollywood somewhere or something?
Yeah,
Like,
you would think somebody that had a business would put it up and at least have it at display, because that'd be a nice, eye candy, man. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of movies like that I venture into also, and then look at how they leave everything up. They're like, it's in a small town somewhere. They build a house and they just left it up.
right?
And I'm thinking, man, that's freaking crazy, because people just claim it and they keep it, or it's in their property, and But there's a lot of cool pieces out there like that, man. And you know, Ed Gein, who's the trucker for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? 1 and 2. Well, he's a trucker in part 1. But I interviewed him last year here in San Antonio, man. And he actually grew up here in San Antonio, moved out there to by Bastrop, Austin area. But he was all like, yeah, that truck. He said, man, that was my personal truck that I use. I still have it in my property. It's just parked there.
Really?
And I'm thinking, like, what do you mean? It's like just outside? And he's like, yeah, it's just going to waste. And I'm thinking, like, bro, like, that's crazy, man. Like, I mean, it's a big truck, so I can, I'm sure you can't just put it inside a house somewhere. But I was thinking, like, man, that'd be, it's a great piece to keep and preserve and have somebody take care of it, But
you mean the
like
one that's at the end of the film in part 1?
Yeah.
Really? The one that he's like, is like chainsaw on the door?
That
Wow.
one. Yeah,
That's
he
cool.
said he said that was his own personal truck, man. That's why they gave him that part, because he was a truck driver and they needed a truck driver. And he was like, so I used it in the film. And he said, man, it's just part of my property, man. And I'm like, I mean, but there's a lot of stories like that, though. There's a lot of people, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's in my closet, or oh, yeah, it's over here. And I'm thinking, like, damn, it just, I guess,
I
something
mean,
you don't want to.
yeah, I mean, he could drive that to, I don't know if it'd be efficient, but if he drove that to like conventions and stuff, I mean, he'd probably get big bucks for pictures with that.
No, you see, and I think he said it wasn't running. So, I mean, that's probably one of the things. It's like to get it back up and running. But I was just thinking, like, as far as even just the frame, maybe something from the truck, and just kind of like pop it with you, wheel it over there, and hey, this is the same window that got hit, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But I'm just thinking, like, long run. But I mean, yeah, he's a great guy. He's actually. I'm not sure if you're on TikTok, but if you follow him on TikTok, man, he's got like tons of great stories, bro. A lot of behind the scenes stuff, man. So good guy to follow.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check him out. That movie was messed up, man. That movie that's the movie. Like, growing up as a kid, my dad would rent me. I'd talk him into, hey, get a scary movie, Dad. Like, I don't know. It's all right. Don't tell your mom. So, but yeah, he'd let me get any of them that I would want to get, except for that one, and I was like 8, 9, 10, and then once I saw it when I was like, I don't know, 17, 18, I was like, I kind of get why he didn't let me see that. I was like, this movie was jacked up. And I'm like, but yeah, that's cool. Speaking of stuff that, is gone or with history, like I say, the orca, the video I got, I'm lucky to have gotten a picture with it, and gotten some video. It's gone now. It's people were, and I knew it wasn't going to be around much longer with the way it was looking. And so, but there's also other places too on that very same trip that I visited that, not only the Part 3 cabin out in California, but with regard to that East Coast trip in 2003, I had stopped up, and this is another video on my channel on Smoking Zombie Films. It's only like a minute long, I think. It's the Friday 13th Part 2 location with the green cabins. And I think that's like the coolest location in the series. I mean, it just has a really neat look. And it's really unfortunate what happened with that property. It's in a really, it's in I think it's northwestern Connecticut, in the Kent, Connecticut area is where it was. It's a really, rich, expensive area. And so, and, people are people. I mean, they don't have to be rich to be rude or mean spirited. I mean, that doesn't really have any bearing, or maybe it does sometimes. But, these people didn't even know, or they played like they didn't know what they bought. And then they bought it and they didn't care. And then they sold it, I think around 2009. And whoever bought it then, they just leveled the whole property. All the cabins are gone. And then they just built this big cabin where the main cabin was, that it looks so out of place. It looks so disproportionate to what should be there. It doesn't look right. And then where those other smaller cabins were, they've left as dirt mounds, and it just looks ruined. It looks ruined. And, I'm happy for those, people that got the bucks and they built their nice big cabin there. But, it wasn't just a really cool set for the Friday the 13th series. It was that place had history to it. It was called, I think, Laurel Ledge, and it had a significant past behind it, going back, I think, to the early 1900s. And they just destroyed it. Just for what? I mean, and it wasn't like it was in bad shape. It was well kept. I mean, even when I was there, it was still in same kind of condition it was in the early 80s when they filmed that movie there. So it's just, I don't know. People just, they don't care.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's too bad. It really is.
Yeah, you see, and that's one of those things. I mean, like you have mentioned. I mean, because whether they didn't know or did know, or maybe they knew and just didn't care, and they were like, they're just flipping it and making money. It's all out of greed or stupidity or whatever the case. But yeah, man, it's sad because in reality, I mean, there's a lot of homes, that people filmed in, and I mean, a lot of people still go in front and they'll take photos, and they show video or footage of the owners now getting upset and running people off, and I'm thinking, like, hey man, like, I mean, it's like if somebody were to tell me, hey, this happened in this house, and and people were out there taking photos, and I'd be like, okay, well, cool, man, it's like, keep it going,
Yeah, that's part of the deal.
Yeah,
I mean, that's part of the deal. If you don't want to take that on, then don't buy the property. Buy another property.
Yeah, get something new, hell. But yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, let me ask you this, because of course, I mean, here in San Antonio, I mean, there've been when it comes to horror, I mean, there's been some films in or around. I mean, when it comes to indie films, there's been plenty. But I mean, when it comes to like blockbuster films, Miss Congeniality, which was in a car, it was a comedy, was filmed here for the most part. We got Daryl from back in the 80s, was filmed in the Riverwalk. There's quite a few films that popped up here. Selena, which of course was after, the famous Tejano singer from Corpus, but, from where you're from, I mean, was there anything specific as far as film that was made out there where you grew up at?
Yeah, in Indiana, northeastern Indiana, Fort Wayne area, not so much. We have I think the Embassy downtown, a really nice theater and venue, but I don't think there's, that's not filming related. It's more like probably plays or schools or what have you. But I'm sure that there's been some films done in the Indianapolis area. I know one of my favorite movies, probably my favorite sports movie, and actually, there's different reasons to be proud to be a Hoosier from Indiana, but the movie Hoosiers is one of those reasons. That movie was really well done, and that's the true story too. That kind of really, I guess, as life's gone along, I kind of like the horror stuff. But as I gotten older, I'm definitely a sucker for a story that's got roots in a true story. That's a really well done movie, and this is a great example of that. Gene Hackman and Dennis Hopper, and just the movie and how genuine it feels, and how good the script is, and it's not really. I'm sure the script probably wrote itself, because it's based on the real underdog story. It's like the definitive underdog story, the Cinderella story, if you will. It's like the smallest team or one of the smallest schools in the state of Indiana beats like a 5 or 6A team in the national or in the state championship. And they're from a little schoolhouse, and that was they were called the Hickory Huskers in the movie. It's just, that was shot, I think, in just below Indianapolis area, I believe, like more towards the southern area. But that comes to mind. I'm sure there's other films that have been done in Indiana, but that's the one that sticks out to me as like probably one of the biggest. And it's funny is they probably one of my favorite actors is Jack Nicholson, and actually they approached him first.
Oh, really?
If he'd be interested in playing the coach in that movie,
Wow.
because he's such a huge basketball fan. He was always on the sidelines in the 80s with the Lakers games. And, but he said, he's like, what? I really want to do this, but unfortunately I got a contract with another movie I have to shoot right now. Man. And I think it was Prizzy's Honor was the movie. I think that was mid-80s with him. But he's like, hey, keep looking, go with my blessing. If you find somebody, then great. But if I'm done with this and you still haven't found somebody, I want to do this. And so he would have been playing it, but Hackman was great. But, relevant to Fort Wayne, this is actually one of the interesting things about Dad's documentary. And there's so many things that are like, wow, or you got to be kidding, or maybe going to make you laugh, maybe choke you up, a little bit with some of this stuff. It's got a little bit of everything in the story. So here's something film related to my hometown in Fort Wayne that is a commonality with Dad. He went to high school with Shelley Long from Cheers.
Oh, man.
And we were watching Cheers once, I think when I was growing up, and he's like, you know what, Sean, I went to high school with her. She was in my literature class my sophomore year. And she was like this really quiet, kind of, skinny, brainy, but just, kind of librarian type, like just kept to herself, didn't talk to anybody. You could tell she was smart. And then that was like, class of 67, I believe. And so, 13 years later, I think Cheers premieres on TV. He watches it, maybe catches it a few minutes into it, and he's like, "There's something familiar about her. I don't know." So he tunes in and watches another episode, and he sees the opening credits. And Shelley Long's one of those rare actresses whose stage name is her real name.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Holy shit! I don't believe it. Here was this girl that didn't talk to anybody, and now she's on this show, nationally televised." They both went to Southside. And that last year he was alive, we were watching it on Netflix, and he's behind me at the dining room table, and I already knew the Shelley Long literature class story, and I'm just looking up about her and just looking up her info. This is playing right here. Dad's behind me over here, and I stop on her birthday, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Hey, Dad, guess what her birthday is? He's like, I don't know. Christmas? No, August 23rd, 1949. You guys were born on the same day in Fort Wayne.
Oh, wow.
He's like, what?
Oh, wow.
That's a 1 in 365 chance right there. I'm like, here it is.
Okay, well, shoot, man. That's pretty... Yeah, I mean, that's a 1 in a million, man, definitely, because, but I mean, the fact that they, went to school and knew each other, man, I mean, and that's one of the things too, because even like for me in high school, a lot of my friends that I knew, throughout the classes, or we meet up in the hallway. Everybody was like an artist, man. Everybody, they got older. They stayed in theater. One's a tattoo artist, the other one's doing graphics. I mean, everybody's, and for myself, like I always found myself trying to figure out what I wanted to do because I didn't have that talent. I used to love taking photos, but I wasn't a photographer. But it was just, it kind of came to this because now it's like I get to talk to people and it's just kind of, it makes sense. I kind of want to be able to just see what's going on. And I tell people I'm nosy. So I'm like, hey, what's going on over there, man? Like, how are things going? But yeah, the same thing. I mean, I don't think I've ever like personally was like, man, I want to be on radio. Or but I did want to like experience that. I did want to go and at least get that opportunity to just get on there and talk,
Hmm.
because before I started doing video, I was just doing audio, and it was a lot less pressure, because I didn't
Hmm.
want to be on video. I was like, man, I don't want people to see me, but people were like, hey, well, who are you interviewing, man? Put it on video. So I started interviewing my guests, and I would leave me out, and then people were like, "Man, where you at? Where's her?" And I was like, "Damn, So I started doing this, and it worked out, man. I mean, I enjoy it for the most part. It's a great thing, and I'm able to meet people I would have never met, throughout life. So it's definitely it's a blessing, man. I love it. I'm gonna take
Yeah.
it for what it is, bro.
Yeah. I bet you meet a variety of people out there for sure.
And let me ask you, man, because I mean, when it comes to documentaries, I mean, you say as far as you want, I guess, liking that, because I mean, I myself, I love true horror. I love things that did happen, and people just kind of, like you said, they kind of just break it down and go into detail.
Mhm.
Was that something that you grew up watching? I mean, was it documentaries like a thing for you?
Um, not so much. I was um no, I just, from my earliest days that I can remember, dad and I just started going to movies. My parents, they divorced when I was one, and then like I'd go to his place like every other weekend. And then, it was like I'd live with my mom and stepdad, and hang with them, and then, it was more about the scary movie intrigue than documentaries for me as a kid, because so I think I was like 5, and I think I got up one night, I think it was a weekend night, and just to maybe get a drink of water or something, and I heard this like screeching, like, wee 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 kind of noise coming from the other room, and I'm like 5, I don't know what that is. And so I I go over toward the living room, because that's where it's coming from, and there's a lazy boy chair right there, and then I look out behind the lazy boy, and like my mom and stepdad and his brother and his, I think my stepdad's or my uncle's date at the time, all the 4 of them are sitting like semicircle on the floor watching this movie very intently, and just like all of a sudden my mom's like, boom, through the roof, like, oh my god. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, what was that? Like, what is that? And I'm like, I don't think I've seen an adult act like that before in real life. So I was intrigued. I was like, I want to know what that is. What is that
Yeah.
about? And
Oh yeah.
so I think it's probably asked my stepdad the next day. We might have been doing some yard work or something, and hey, so you guys watching something on TV last night? What was that? And he's like, oh, that's a scary movie. You can't watch those. I was like, okay. So I go to my dad's every other weekend, and we'd watch movies anyway. That was our thing, and in addition to, you know, uh,
Sweet. Yeah.
dogs and whatever else, basketball or whatever, and so one time I was like, hey Dad, scary movie. He's like, I don't know. Is it all right with your mom? It's like, oh yeah, no, she's fine. Like, I was like, I don't think you're telling me the truth. Okay, I'll tell you what. Number one, they're not real. Number two, don't tell your mom. I was like, okay, yeah. So,
Done.
so
Done.
that started my interest on the side. But it wasn't just horror movies in the '80s for me. I mean, I loved you know, I mean, they're now classics, but I was a kid then. I was growing up. I was super young at the turn of that decade, and you know, I was like 3. So, and you know, we started watching these, and that was a big part of the journey that really, you know, inspired me to want to be a part of it. Was, you know, I didn't know these were going to be classics. I thought every decade is going to have these great experiences on screen. I didn't. You don't have any basis for comparison. You're a kid. So what you're seeing here for the first time is like your first time experiencing anything like that. So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so that's, you know, I saw so many great ones on the screen with him, like pretty much all the classics you consider nowadays from the 80s I saw probably with him in the movie theater.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, as far as documentaries, I probably maybe started getting into those more in my later teens, early 20s, you know, and then now I'm really into them because you know, I'm not really huge into horror anymore. I mean, it's not the same. Like it's,
No,
you
not at
know, I'm
all.
at a different point in my life. Horror's different. Everything's different. So, and as I got older, the movies, you know, in my 20s, the movies that really hit me at my core that, you know, made you think about something or made you feel or made you experience, you know, something and give you thoughts about life and people that make you grow as a person. That's the kind of movies that really meant something to me. Like the movie Crash. I don't know if you've seen that. Like that's a really good movie. Like with how many levels and layers it has within it, and it just gets you thinking about a lot of things. You know. And I didn't even realize I was doing that until it was all put together for that part 3 documentary. I mean, I knew I was making a tribute story about Richard's life for the fans that didn't get to meet him. And there's a lot of fans now, and I knew that these Friday the 13th movies are not going anywhere. And so you're going to keep having these younger and younger fans that, you know, and Richard's gone now. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't even, I don't know if you had a chance to see the documentary. But I didn't know, I only knew a small piece of the story when I started that. Like, as the interviews started coming in, and I was like, he did what? And he created what? And he discovered what? And he won an Emmy for what? Like, he
Wow.
was a humble guy. Like, he didn't boast. He wasn't a braggart. He didn't talk about these things. I found out about these things through who I got to interview. Like, it was a very and then, you know, and a testament to his character is Adrienne King's story, you know, from Friday Part 1,
Yeah.
how he potentially saved her life. I mean, wow, like that's wild stuff. So looking back on that, I didn't realize that I was kind of taking the 80s horror kid that loved these movies and combining it with the adult film watcher I am today that really likes stuff that moves you and, you know, takes you on this journey of that connects with you as a person, and it kind of put those two things together, and that's the documentary.
No, no, for sure, and that's one of the things I love about when it comes to even doing interviews, because there's times when I'm talking to one of the actors or past actors, and I bring up something, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you know what? I was, you know, that was my brother, or that was my mom," and then they just happened to be there in the, you know, on the set, and they jumped in or whatever the case may be. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you find out a lot of good stuff, man, and it's just my favorite thing is always like, man, what's something funny that happened back to, you know, behind the scenes that, you know, just kind of stay with you. And they always bring us some cool stuff, man. It's just random, but they're like, man, this happened and so said this, and
Yeah,
everybody starts cracking up, you know, and it's just like, okay, cool, man. You know, it's like, you know, people forget, you know, there's still people back there, you know, there's people working. I mean, it's work, but for the
yeah.
most part, you know, a lot of these films took a lot of takes, you know, get done
Mm-hmm.
perfectly.
Well, yeah, you know, it was, and there's the short. It's just a short film on the channel there called Ancient Games. Ancient Games.
Okay.
It's it that was the one where I was like, you know, I played the lead villain guy in it, and that was funny. Like that was just shooting with friends to
Yeah.
do that, and you know, and Jeffrey Potts wrote that script, and he's like, well, I had this idea for you to play this character, and would you take it, would you be interested? Would you take a look? I was like, well, that's wow. I'm like, really, me? I'm like, all right, that's flat. I mean, that's flattering. I mean, wow, okay, cool, absolutely. So, I looked at it, and yeah, I'm like, sure, I'm all in, but there's one problem. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons in my life, like, and I'm supposed to be the guy that's all about this. he's like yeah. And then so was like, well, we can, the guys who shot it, they know the game very well. So it was kind of like, as we're shooting, I'm doing kind of double duty with, okay, what's the scene about? What's what am I going for here? And also, what does this mean here regarding this part of the game, this part of the game? What does this mean? So they're kind of teaching me. So I'm learning that at the same time. I'm learning that and putting inflection on what's this and what's that, and yeah, that I like that. That was fun. That was a fun little short, and yeah, the fun twist at the end there. That was, but it's a hoot. I mean, there's a lot of great fun stories on film shoots. Yeah, there's there's a lot of interview footage that unfortunately just didn't fit the documentary's narrative, so it couldn't be used, which it kills me, because there was such fun stuff that didn't get used in the final doc, and I was really wanting to do something with that extra stuff and kind of create an additional, a kind of a companion to the documentary, but it hasn't seen the light of day yet. But it's like David Cadams, he was the hippie in part 3, and he looks like Tommy Chong in that movie, and so he shares that the idea for his character and why he looks like Tommy Chong in that movie is because it was supposed to be a girlfriend boyfriend kind of Cheech and Chong duo, because they were really famous then, and they're still famous, but I mean, their movies were going, and so he was cast as the Chong, and and then his girlfriend was supposed to be Hispanic, and so there was literally going to be like a couple for that, and that was the original idea behind it. And he said that they got this one girl that they brought in a bunch of girls to read with him, and this one she was just perfect for it, and so he was totally surprised when he thought it was going to be her when they started shooting, and it wasn't. It was I think her name was Rachel Howard. But yeah, I mean, just like that, and there was I might be embarrassing him on some of this. It's like somebody was like, he was in the outhouse, and somebody's tickling him because it's not a real outhouse. He's like, oh, jeez, what? Like,
oh man,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like,
there's
just classic stuff. But
there's a few pieces out there that they post. I think one of them, and I forgot which part or which movie it was, but it was a Halloween movie, and the actor, like the guy behind the mask, he actually snuck up on him and scared the hell out of him. Like, they didn't know he was going to do that, but they were doing a part, and he kind of snuck up behind him, and he's like, God damn it, like freaking, but it's just, it's yeah. I mean, you cannot not have fun out there, man. I mean,
yeah,
kind of break the ice and get everybody, to zone in and get comfortable. But I think it's cool, man. I mean, I know, it's all work. I mean, of course, these movie producers, directors, they want to get this stuff out, but at the same time, a lot of time they spend a lot of time filming. So it's like you can not not get used to being around some people and making friends,
Yeah. Well, another one of David's stories, like, he had so many stories that, God, they were just awesome. And they just didn't really fit. And I was like, damn it. Well, another one that comes to mind was, they were, Steve Miner and the crew for part 3, they were on location there, and they had this van, and, and Steve's supposed to be out there shooting or getting ready for a scene, and they're all in the van, they're all playing poker, and he's like, yeah, no, it's fine, go ahead. And so, you know, he goes back, you know, it's like, uh, it was, it was good stuff. It was good stuff. And you know, I'm sure there's plenty of those stories behind the scenes, just behind the scenes photos too. I mean, from the whole series, just horror movies. You know, I've been on a few, definitely that I've made since then. Some of them have done really well. Um, and the stories behind the scenes are pretty good. I mean, they're fun stuff. You know, back to the original or that Halloween, I think you're talking maybe about Dick Warlock, who was the stuntman for Halloween 2, and he went in for the interview for Myers, and he just saw the mask laying in a room, and he put it on and scared the hell out of the secretary or something like that. And yeah. And in the first one, it was just it was John Carpenter's friend Nick Castle from film school.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, he was just there watching his friend make this movie.
Yeah.
He's like, well, why don't you just throw this mask on and just be the bad guy for scenes?
Yeah. You see, and that's what's crazy because even back then, I mean, I asked some of the actors, every time from Fright Night, they were here a while back from Return of the Living Dead, and I'm always asking them, like, man, I mean, what were you thinking when this movie was done? Were you like excited to watch it? And they were like, man, it was just a job. Like, we had no idea this was going to get as big as it was, and he said it wasn't. I was already doing like 2, 3 other movies when I heard it was out, and I was like, okay, I'll go watch it, and didn't realize it was big. Like people really wanted to see it, and that's kind of like it's just like one of those like you never know, because if it's a film and you're like, okay, you know what, it's going to be great, and it doesn't get a lot of hype or whatever the case may be, but there's a few good ones out there, man, that I'm kind of like, damn, they get under. They go under the radar, and I'm like, damn, those are good movies, man. They just didn't get the money behind them to push them to be able to, go worldwide and have the world watch it. But it's a lot of great films.
I think a lot of, especially these days in the last 10 years, a lot of independent stuff, and the lesser known, a lot of the better stuff right now. It's, and a lot of the studios have been about this reboot craze for going on 15
man.
now, and it's just, I'd say, probably upwards of upper 90 percentile of those movies they're not better than the originals.
No.
So, it's just, everybody loves original stuff. And it's like they've stopped investing in original stuff because there is a risk to it. All these reboots, even if they don't make great money, I think the rights are all paid off. So they still do pretty well, even if they don't do well. So that's
that's they want to make that money, dude. I mean, obviously, they don't want to put something out there that's going to bomb, and but I will say this though, because I've talked to quite a few, as far as directors and producers, and when it comes to the indie world. And they're like, man, like they're not making movies like they used to. Like there's a count, like they used to do like 180 movies a year. Now it's like down to 36. Like everything's going to streams, Paramount. Everybody bought their own stream, so nobody's even. So now because of that, a lot of indie films are being able to go to the big screen, mostly local, because of course they go to where they're at, but they're able to showcase their films there. I mean, there's a few that had gotten opportunities to go through Regal or Santikos or Alamo Drafthouse, and some of them are great, man. Some of them, it's just, it depends on what you're expecting. But for the most part, I'm just, glad that they're getting that opportunity, because it's like, it's hard, it's just, I mean, like Terrifier, for example, was one of the ones that kind of like, they just low budget, they put it out there, went crazy. People loved it. They made part 2. Now they're like part 3 is coming out next month. And it's just like, or the end of the year, I think. But it's just, I mean, you never know how people are gonna react. A lot of times, I think it's just the timing too, man, because it's to where maybe nothing else is going on, and people are like bored, and they see this movie and they're like, oh crap, like kind of catches people off guard. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier. When it comes to us being distracted, or them trying to distract us. Something goes viral, something goes, everybody's talking about this, and we forget about everything else, man. But
well, it's kind of like, and I think PJ Souls talked about this with the first Halloween. It's kind of like how they made movies back then was kind of like they just put out all these different kind of movies, like, not movie of the week kind of thing, but kind of like along those lines, and just, one would hit and one wouldn't hit, and it's like, well, and it's what clicks, and and it just happened to be that it was kind of like, let's, like Mickey Rooney used to say, let's make a movie and let's just do this. And let's, it's something new. It's original. We'll see how it does. And let's just have fun with it. And Halloween just seemed to hit with people because it has so many, I think because it just has so many things that are experiences in America and United States that people have grown up with. Everybody knows Halloween. Everybody has had a babysitter. Everybody's heard about the boogeyman growing up. I mean, all these things are pretty much universal to any kid that's grown up in this country. So, I mean, it just synced up with, it clicked, and it was really well done, and the music's awesome. And
oh yeah, bro. I mean, everything about it,
yeah,
it definitely.
Great, yeah, great atmosphere. It's my favorite horror movie. So, yeah, and Carpenter's great. He's probably my favorite director too. I mean, he's a very versatile director. He's not just with the horror genre, but pretty much everything he takes on, he does a really good job at.
No, yeah, and a lot of detail. I mean, there's a lot of homework back, when it comes to character. I mean, and that's one of the things too, because I mean, I do my own little movie trailer review, and I mean, for me, it's always like the points, like when it comes to the music, the lighting, the characters, how they react when it comes to a movie. If they zinc, if I feel like they kind of, they don't, there's no chemistry, things like that. But I mean, music for me is big. I mean, we talked about soundtracks, and it's like, man, if the music's great, I'm like, okay, that's already a plus. So
yeah. Check out if you get some time and you want to just have some background music sometime, check out the soundtracks playlist I've added to the Smoking Zombie Films YouTube channel. I've definitely gone through and put a lot of rare ones on there that that's the thing. Just yesterday, I don't know if you remember, this movie is called Real Genius from like '85. It had Val Kilmer. A lot of really fun songs in that one. It was the year before he did Top Gun. But it's kind of like, I think that, Real Genius, Summer School, and The Breakfast Club are the best like teen school related comedies of the '80s. Easily, those are the top three right there. And just a really, really great soundtrack to that movie too. And they never released a soundtrack for it for whatever reason. It was never put out. Yeah, it was never put out on tape or CD or anything like that. So I just kind of created under the playlist, I put together the songs that are in the movie that somebody, people have found them somehow. And
cool,
like that's the kind of stuff I do for playlist there. So.
You see, and I was gonna say earlier too, because that's a smart thing, because you yourself can always go back to it and you know where it's at. So you're like, hey, what's that song? And just go and find it, because yeah, man, it's kind of like the same thing with the what's going on right now with the movies. Everybody's streaming, everybody's happy with it because it goes everywhere. But it's like at the end of the day, like they come off sometimes. They don't leave the movies out there, and it's like, if you don't have like a DVD or a Blu-ray format, then if it's gone, it's gone. Like, you're not going to be able to find it, unless somebody saves it and puts it on YouTube or something,
Right. I think I'm old school in a lot of ways. Definitely an old soul. I was even told that when I was, in my early teens growing up. I love stuff from my, parents' generation, the '60s, '70s, the music, the movies, all that good stuff. My '71 Jeep's another testament to being a throwback. Yeah, it's like, that's the thing. As I personally, my personal thing is, I think we've kind of overshot with the streaming thing. I'm about, having a hard copy, and now they're cheap. I mean, you can get one online, like a DVD or Blu-ray, for the same price you'd pay for it streaming, except you'd have it forever. So why not buy it? And then, because if you stream it, you're going to get it for like a day or two.
Yeah.
And if you want to watch it again, you have to pay again. It's like, why?
No, that's true. I mean, it's true, because even like behind me, I mean, I've got VHS formats, I've got, DVDs. I recently just bought my first ever Blu-ray, and it's actually on the indie film that I'm, I have a small perk, in, and It's called The Evil 3, but it's on Blu-ray, and I'm like, okay, you know what? So I'm gonna start buying them. You know, let's figure why not. You know, I'm gonna if they're not on DVD, then I'll definitely get them on Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, bro, because of course, I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time, brother, and I do want to bring you back, man. We'll definitely talk about maybe bringing you on here and you know, plugging in other stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm sure we can talk about, and you know, especially when it comes to some of the back, you know, homework that you've done, like when it comes to documentaries and stories.
Hmm.
I mean, we'll try to figure something out, man. But bro, I do appreciate you jumping on this, my man. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure. Thank you.
And of course, I'm gonna let people know when it comes to your platform because I mean, you do have your YouTube channel. Do you have like a Instagram? I tried to find you on Instagram and I couldn't find you.
I did have one, but I've just kind of just gone. I've just gone to the yeah. It's just Facebook for now. I might reactivate it. It's just kind of deactivated for now. I don't know with the whole AI thing. I just kind of like, well, like
No, but
okay, do we
I'm
really
gonna
need
post,
this? Do we
I'm gonna
really need
post this
AI?
up. Yeah, but this is you right here, though, right on YouTube. I mean, they
Yeah.
can go to Smoking Zombie Films and of course find you.
Hmm.
But of course, man. I mean, don't hang up yet. Of course, you know everybody out there. Of course, once again, this is Spida Coming Soon podcast. Thank you, Sean Richards, my man. Thank you for jumping on here. As always, follow up. Until next time.